Some seasons, the room is quiet, the bills are paid, and the routine is running like a well-worn path, and yet something inside you won't sit still. It's not loud, it doesn't shout, it hums, a small, steady ache that says, there has to be more. Not more in the greedy way, not bigger or shinier, but truer, more aligned with who you are, and who you sense God has been shaping you to be when no one is watching. I've lived long enough to know that ache. I've tried to silence it with gratitude lists and busyness. I've told myself to stop being ungrateful because so many would gladly trade places. I've kept the good job, smiled at the good people, kept going through the good motions, until the word good started to feel like a soft blanket being tucked too tightly over my face. Still warm, still kind, but suffocating. If that's where you are, you're not failing. You're not broken. You might be hearing one of the quietest mercies God uses to keep us from a life that fits on paper but stunts the soul. Welcome to Faith in Practice. I don't know your story, but I know the whisper you can't seem to shake. And I've learned to stop fighting it, not because I've grown wise or learned some secret, but because I've walked long enough with God to notice patterns. He leads us slowly. He leads us in ways that don't flatter the ego. He leads us in circles that are actually spirals. And sometimes, He refuses to let us settle where something inside us is growing too big for a space that once felt fine. Many years ago, I accepted a position that seemed to answer every question. It paid well. The people were kind. The work was meaningful enough. Everyone around me said, "This is perfect for you." I wanted it to be true. I even thanked God for the relief of it. And yet, driving home in the dark after those first weeks, I would feel this inexplicable tightness in my chest. On paper, I had everything I had prayed for. In my spirit, I felt like I had parked halfway to where God was going. It wasn't drama. I wasn't bored or ungrateful. I wasn't looking for applause. I was tired of striving, if anything. But once you learn the shape of God's presence in your life, you also learn the shape of His absence. Not that He leaves us, He doesn't, but that a particular peace, a particular sense of rightness, doesn't rest on what looks tidy. That absence is a gift. It saves us from calling numbness peace. I've tried to ignore that restlessness before. I've told myself, this is fine. Be thankful. Don't overthink. I've stayed a year too long somewhere because change felt like betrayal. Betrayal of the people who trusted me, the promises I'd made to myself, the sense of responsibility I'd taken on. I didn't want to be the person who is always reaching for something else. Settling looked like maturity. It felt like stability. It kept everyone around me comfortable. But in the quiet, I was losing my way. Here's the simple, unpolished truth. God will let you be comfortable for a while, but He loves you too much to let you be comfortable forever if comfort is shrinking your soul. There's a difference between peace and sedation. Peace has movement in it like a river. Sedation keeps you still because you're too tired to move. And there's a difference between contentment and complacency. Contentment says, God, I trust you here. Complacency says, God, I don't want to trust you anywhere else. If you're feeling the ache of restlessness in a life that is good enough, it may not be rebellion. It may be grace, a holy dissatisfaction that refuses to let the image of God in you harden under the weight of approval, comfort, or fear. Scripture puts it gently. The steps of a person are established by the Lord, not the couches. Steps, movement, direction, journey. That small ache might be your feet growing ready for the next step, even if nothing external looks wrong. I don't share this as someone who figured out a formula. I share it as someone who has stumbled enough to stop pretending. I've tried to make a calling out of convenience. I've tried to confuse usefulness with purpose. I've tried to impress God by enduring a situation He wasn't asking me to endure. There is a kind of faithfulness that is really just fear, dressed up in religious clothes. What makes this hard is that much of life truly is ordinary. Most of our days are simple, hidden, repetitive. God meets us there with joy and companionship, so it's understandable that you may question your own restlessness. Are you just ungrateful? Are you bored? Are you chasing novelty? For me, the clearest distinction has been this. Boredom makes me want to escape myself. Holy dissatisfaction makes me want to listen. Escape is loud and quick. anywhere but here. Holy dissatisfaction is quiet and persistent. There's more of me to find, but not in this shape. It's the shepherd's nudge, not the crowd's shout. And over time, that nudge becomes mercifully inconvenient. It messes up the tidy narrative you thought would finally let you exhale. It reminds you that we are not meant to build a life that needs no God. One of the gentlest reframes I've learned is this: God's silence is not his absence. And discomfort does not mean you are failing at contentment. Sometimes the ache is God's way of keeping you from tying your identity to a role that cannot carry it. You are more than a job title, more than a relational status, more than a set of talents. You're a person God is shaping, and shape requires pressure. Clay that's never pressed never holds water. We tend to think our calling will feel like approval. People will clap, the doors will open, the path will glow. But I have seen God love people so faithfully that he closes the kind doors. He shuts the gentle gates. He bars the way not because there's danger where we want to go, but because there is growth somewhere else. The early believers learned this in their own way. They had plans, good ones, faithful ones, and yet the text says the Spirit did not allow them to go where they intended. That's not mystical flattery. That's direction. That's love that refuses to let us make success into an idol. You may be carrying quiet guilt because you should be happy. You have what you prayed for, and yet you're restless. Can we name something gently? What you prayed for back then may not be the same thing God is growing in you now. The prayers were not wrong. The gifts you've received are not wasted. But the person who asked for them is being refined. And refined people outgrow certain containers. Be kind to who you were, but don't make a museum out of it. God raises living things, not exhibits. Here's another gentle reframe that has helped me. God orders steps, not comfort. He doesn't promise that the terrain will feel stable under every footfall. He promises that we won't be alone, and that each step will carry us deeper into the person he is shaping us to be. The old proverb says it simply: we plan our way, but the Lord directs our steps. That direction can feel like a refusal, like a delay, like a tug you can't fully justify. It can frustrate the tidy timelines we prefer. But over time, you look back and realize the detours were corridors. There's a story I hesitate to tell because I don't want to turn my life into a lesson, but perhaps it offers a little light. I once almost married a good person. We loved God. Our families approved. We had a plan. I felt that quiet ache, and I chalked it up to normal nerves. But the closer we came to the day, the louder the ache. It wasn't fear of commitment. It wasn't doubt about their character. It was a simple sense. This was a good chapter, and it was ending. And if I forced it to continue, I would ask us both to become smaller than God intended. We ended things gently. It hurt. It hurt in that way that makes you wonder if you have ruined something beautiful with your own restlessness. Years later, we both found lives that fit us with a peace we could not have manufactured back then. The ache taught me to recognize what peace is and what peace isn't. Peace is not the absence of questions. It's the presence of God's quiet yes in the middle of them. I don't say that to romanticize pain. Some endings are messy. Some transitions are slow. Some paths mean losing the approval of people whose approval mattered. That's part of why settling looks appealing. It costs less in the short term, but it can cost your soul in the long term. Living with a quiet misalignment won't destroy you overnight. It will just bend you into a shape that can't hold what God is trying to pour into your life. Like a branch that looks healthy until you notice the slight twist that keeps it from bearing the weight of fruit. There's a picture in Scripture of God like an eagle that stirs the nest. It's not a violent act. It's deliberate. Eagles remove the soft lining so the young feel the sticks and become willing to fly. They are not cruel. They are preparing. Sometimes that's what God's restlessness feels like. You're in the same nest, but the comfort has been thinned. Not because God is punishing you, but because wings are meant for air, not straw. Before we talk about what to do with this kind of restlessness, let me say this clearly. You do not need to prove anything here. You do not need to hurry to justify yourself. You don't need a dramatic announcement. You don't need to spiritualize every detail. It's enough to admit that you are listening. That alone honors God. That alone keeps you tender. Some of God's best work happens in the listening, in that long space between recognizing you cannot stay where you are and knowing where to go next. You may wonder if you're missing God because clarity hasn't come. I've come to believe that clarity is often a reward for trust, not a prerequisite. We want a map. He gives us a step. We want a blueprint. He gives us a voice. Jesus once said his sheep know his voice. They follow not because they have memorized the terrain, but because they trust the shepherd. That trust is learned, slowly, through seasons where we feel caught between what is fine and what is faithful. So what does holy dissatisfaction look like when it's lived, not just named? It looks like this. You start to care about different things. You find yourself less interested in how it looks, more interested in whether it's true. The compliments that used to carry you feel thinner. The applause doesn't reach as far. The quiet moments of obedience weigh more than the visible wins. You begin to notice a particular grief at spending yourself on what's good while ignoring what's yours. And I don't mean yours in a possessive way. I mean the peace of God's heart that He has tucked into you. The peace that lights up on certain paths and sits quiet on others. Holy dissatisfaction will make you more tender, not more restless. That's a test I've learned to trust. The restlessness that comes from ego makes me impatient with people. The restlessness that comes from God makes me more compassionate toward people, even the ones who don't understand me. One kind looks for a stage. The other looks for a path, even if it's hidden. One kind wants to be seen. The other wants to be true. There will be days when you plead for God to just make you content with what you have. Sometimes that prayer is right. Sometimes it is exactly what God is doing, teaching you to be faithful in a small place, to love the people right in front of you, to break up the sacred and the ordinary until there's no distance between them. But when that prayer doesn't quiet the ache, don't rush to rebuke yourself. Remember, contentment is not the same as resignation. Contentment is trusting God in motion, not resigning yourself to something that violates how He made you. If you're afraid of disappointing people, you're not alone. I have wrestled with that more than I'd like to admit. It's one thing to disappoint strangers. It's another to disappoint those who believed in you, who supported you, who were sure that this life, this role, this path was perfect for you. Sometimes God asks us to carry the disappointment of others without becoming bitter toward them and without becoming a martyr. It's tender work. It's holy growing up. You learn to love people while no longer letting them decide the shape of your obedience. I have also learned that God is patient with us here. If you're not ready to move, He doesn't abandon you. He teaches while you stay. He reorders desires from the inside out. He opens and closes doors while preparing your willingness. He does not shame you into obedience. He grows you into it. He who began a good work in you will carry it on to completion. That promise has nothing to do with hustle and everything to do with faithfulness over time. One of the strange mercies of God is how He uses frustration, not as punishment, but as guidance. That unnameable friction you feel when you do the right thing in the wrong place, that's information. That inexplicable energy when you do a small thing in the right place, that's information too. Over time, these gentle signals thread together. You begin to recognize your own alignment, not as a brand or a platform, but as a way of being that harmonizes with God's leading in your life. I think of roots underground. For a season, everything looks still. On the surface, nothing changes. But the roots are restless, not in a panicked way, in a seeking way. They search for deeper water. They refuse to remain in dry soil just because it was wet once. They stretch quietly toward a source that sustains, not a puddle that's satisfied for a day. God honors that kind of reaching. He has, over the years, met my small, hidden reach with provisions I could not have anticipated, friendships I didn't know I needed, opportunities that felt like custom invitations, the kind of courage that arrives only in the moment you need it. Another picture that has helped me: pruning. Not because I enjoy it, I don't, but because it names why loss can feel like love. God sometimes prunes what is producing, not to punish, but to direct life toward fruit we cannot see yet. It's a strange kindness, to cut back something that is working. But He knows what a richer harvest requires. He knows where the sap needs to go. If you feel like something good is being cut back in your life without an obvious reason, don't assume failure. It may be a redirection of life. rising inside you for what's coming. I want to be careful here. Holy dissatisfaction is not a license to abandon responsibilities casually or to romanticize risk. It doesn't make you a hero. It just keeps you human. The people who live this way don't swagger. They walk, sometimes slowly, sometimes with tears, but there's a steadiness, a quiet conviction that says, I will not build a life that asks me to ignore what God is awakening in me. That conviction doesn't make choices easy, but it does make them clear. Over the years, I've noticed a few quiet lessons that keep returning. God rarely speaks to me about 5 years from now in a way that changes today. He speaks to me about the next step, the next phone call, the one small yes that lines up with truth rather than fear. When I take that step, the next one appears. It's like walking at night with a lantern. The light moves as I move. Closed doors can feel like failure, but many of mine have been protection. Protection from overextending, from attaching my identity to a role, from forcing seasons that aren't mine. When the gate doesn't open, I've learned to pay attention without assuming I've done something wrong. When God is shifting the shape of a calling, He often enlarges my compassion. I care more about people than outcomes. I feel more tenderness for those who are uncertain. If your restlessness makes you harsh, it may be ego. If it makes you kinder, it may be God. God's pace is deliberate. He teaches slowly because He builds deeply. The world rewards the quick pivot and the dramatic announcement. God rests in the hidden root and the careful replanting. I remember a night, a simple night, where I sat in my car outside a grocery store and cried for no grand reason. On the surface, I was fine, but inside, the restlessness had grown honest. I told God I didn't know how to be grateful for what I had and yet long for what I didn't. I didn't want to dismiss the gifts in my life, and I also didn't want to call comfort faithfulness. I didn't receive a blueprint in that parking lot. I received something better, the quiet sense that I didn't have to pretend with God, that He wasn't irritated by my confusion, that He would order my steps even if I never received a plan I could show anyone. Some weeks after that, a small opportunity came, one that didn't impress anyone but lined up with everything inside me. I said yes, not as defiance, but as a response to a question God had been asking in my spirit. That small step did not change my life overnight. It did something better. It changed my center of gravity. I began to measure my days not by what looked impressive, but by what felt aligned. And little by little, the restlessness softened into movement. The ache that once felt like a burden became a guide. There's a verse that has walked with me. Blessed are those whose strength is in you, whose hearts are set on pilgrimage. It speaks of passing through dry valleys and finding springs there. That's the long view of faith. Not arrival quickly, but pilgrimage, movement, becoming who we were meant to be, step by step, through seasons that don't flatter us, and through seasons that do. And in all of it, the God who started this journey in us will not abandon it unfinished. If you are in that restless place, with a life that works, and yet a soul that won't stop leaning, you are not disloyal for noticing. You are not ungrateful for listening. You may be in the in-between, that gap where identity is being refined. It's a strange place. Old markers stop reassuring you. New markers haven't arrived. In that place, the Spirit does quiet, precise work, loosening your attachment to outcomes, strengthening your trust in presence. You begin to see the difference between what is yours to carry and what belongs to God. Some will misunderstand. That's part of the walk. You can love them anyway. You can bless them for the part they played. You can believe that they, too, are being led, even if their path never crosses this particular tension. And if they are right, and you are simply restless, God will make that clear. He is kind like that. He disciplines without humiliating. He guides without shoving. You will hear a voice behind you saying, "This is the way. Walk in it." It may not come as a sentence. It may come as a settledness that you cannot conjure on your own. I once thought that purpose would feel like standing on the right stage. Now I think it feels like walking the right road. There's a big difference. The stage asks you to perform. The road asks you to persevere. The stage depends on others seeing. The road depends on God being present. The stage can be taken away. The road cannot, because it is a way of being, not a platform. One day, perhaps, you will look back on this restless season and speak of it with gratitude. Not because it was easy, not because it resolved quickly, but because it kept you honest. It kept you listening. It refused to let you decorate a place God had only asked you to pass through. Some of God's tenderest mercies look like inconvenience in the moment. An unignorable ache. A door that won't open. A door that won't close. If you need a small handhold for today, here are a few gentle truths that have steadied me. Not as orders, but as reminders. You are allowed to be grateful for what you have, and still hopeful for what fits more truly with who God is shaping you to be. Not every good thing is your thing. Letting go of a good fit for a truer one is not waste. It's wisdom. Waiting is not punishment. It is preparation. The time where trust deepens, motives are sifted, and hidden strength grows. Obedience doesn't always feel peaceful at first. Peace often follows obedience, like a shadow follows the body, not the other way around. God is not trying to trick you. He's not hiding his will as a test you can fail. He's drawing you into relationship, a way of walking, step by step, where his presence matters more than the map. And if today you feel stuck between two good choices, or between one good choice and one honest ache, know this: the God who led you here will not go silent now. The psalmist said, "He leads me." Simple words, not "he pushes me," not "he ropes me." He leads. That means he is ahead of you, not behind you, not yelling at you to move faster, but walking where you can place your feet in his footprints, quietly, steadily, faithfully. What happens on the other side of holy dissatisfaction? Not a trouble-free life, not a brand new story with no scar tissue. What happens is alignment, the sense that your energy is now spent on what fits how God made you. The frustration that used to attend every day lessens. Not because circumstances suddenly favor you, but because you're no longer arguing with the shape of your own soul. There is relief there, not loud, but deep. Purpose, I've learned, is less about the spotlight and more about integrity. Living in one direction, saying a real yes, and allowing it to shape your days across years, not minutes. Purpose shows up in small rooms, where no one applauds, where the work is unseen but steady. It shows up in the decision to remain true when being impressive would be easier. It shows up in the refusal to pretend that good enough is good enough when God is calling you further. Looking back across the years, I'm grateful for the closed doors. I'm grateful for the ache that refused to let me make a home in every pleasant valley. I'm grateful for the people who misunderstood me and the people who stayed. I'm grateful for the slow work of God, for the nights that felt endless and the mornings that finally came. I'm grateful for the patience of a shepherd who knows how to speak quiet enough that only those who want to hear will hear, and loud enough that those who need to follow can still find their way. I don't know where you are in your story, but I carry a quiet confidence for you. You are not going to miss your life by refusing to settle for less than what God is aligning in you. You may take your time. You may falter. You may need to circle back and learn again. That's all right. Faith is a long road. God is patient. He is not anxious about your timeline. He is not tallying your speed. He is forming Christ in you, and that is the slowest, richest work. So, if tonight is another night where you lay in the dark and feel that ache humming, you can let it hum. You don't have to shush it with apologies. You don't have to fix it by morning. You can let it be what it is, a signal that you belong to a living God who is still writing, still shaping, still inviting you into a life that is not just good enough, but true enough to hold his presence with you. Before we part, hear this blessing in plain words. May you have the courage to stay where God is still teaching you, and the courage to move when he loosens your roots. May your ears grow familiar with the shepherd's voice, and your feet grow steady on the path, even when it winds. May the ache of holy dissatisfaction lead you not into restlessness for its own sake, but into alignment with the life God has been patiently building in you all along. If this way of walking with God resonates with you, you may quietly support the channel by subscribing. No pressure. This is faith in practice, and you are welcome here. As you go, remember, God orders steps. not comfort. He is not stingy with direction. He knows how to get you where you need to be, even if you don't know where that is yet. The restlessness you feel may be the mercy you need. And the story he's writing in you, the one no one else sees, is worth not settling for less than his faithful, steady, patient best.